the actual lesson started. So now we're recording everything that we're going to be talking about and just run it through. And the first thing I like to do is run it through and let you watch yourself, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, whatever it takes, and talk a little bit about some of what you see, okay? And we'll let that direct some of the conversation and discussion, and then we'll go back and I'll take you through, start to finish, what I see and where I think you know, you can make some adjustments or things that are happening that may be not as efficient as they could be. Okay. All right. So let's let it go through. Anything in particular that you see when you watch that? Good, bad, otherwise? What do you like? What do you dislike?
I don't like my leg.
What about it?
When it sticks out and my leg just goes away.
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay. What would you, so like at this point right here?
Well, I've been told by other people, like, when I do that, it makes my body swing open.
Okay.
So I'll stay closed.
Okay. And so your understanding is that that's a contributing factor to you opening up early.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What else?
My glove. It's not nothing
Okay. Where would you say you'd want your glove to be?
like that. Like here.
Okay. That's a Jeff Peck thing, right? Pull the rope, bring the glove back into the, yeah. And that's going to be one area where there's a significant difference in what we talk about and what we teach with respect to what goes on with that glove side. And largely what we talk about is based on, you know, just a lot of research of what big league pitchers, very effective and successful pitchers actually do, which is the glove side does not come back. It doesn't move backward away from the target toward the body when we rotate the throw. The glove side will rotate often in place and most of the time actually moves forward toward the target, but your body closes the gap. So you actually work to the glove.
That's what I used to do.
Rather than, and here's the thing, most people, like if you start off with throwers when they're really young, that's what happens. You think about it like even quarterbacks going to throw. The hand is out in front when they're going to throw. They're not pulling this arm back in. It's a rotation management and balance and direction piece. It happens so fast that it looks at regular speed like the glove's coming back in, but when you slow it down and you watch it at high frame rate slow motion, you see that it's actually not going this way at all. So we want that glove to be positioned somewhere between you and your target, and your body will rotate into the glove on the way there, closing that gap, giving the appearance that it's coming in, but in reality, you're going to it, okay? I wonder if I have I've got a bunch on the downstairs computer. Good videos. I have that Verlander. There it is. Let's see. Okay. So you see where Verlander's glove's at when he lands. See how it's like, it's already kind of under his armpit? Now we'll circle it up and just watch where his glove actually goes from this point. See how it moved forward from where it was at? So as he's rotating to throw, it goes from here this way. It doesn't go from here and pull back. And it's the same thing. Guys that have that glove farther out there will actually leave it there and turn into it even more. Guys who have glove closer to their body when they land, fold it out. Guys that have their glove farther away, rotate into it. But we've yet to see a video of a big league pitcher whose glove is actually coming back while he's rotating the throw. So it's, you know, it's one of those things, it's one of those teaches that's out there, that's been out there for a long time because of the visual perception of old school watching pitchers thinking that's happened, but it's not really realistically what's going on. So the good news is that you're not pulling the glove back. It's working down and away from your body just a little bit, so you could probably manage the direction that you're taking your momentum and your arm if you're drawing the glove more toward the middle of your body. So you're going to use that glove side to help funnel that arm speed and all your momentum toward the target. But the good news is it's not doing this. Okay. All right, what else do you see? See, and you're actually trying to do it. You see this move where your glove's actually wanting to work its way up? Yeah. So you're kind of subconsciously, athletically doing what we're talking about, where your arms go from apart from each other and they want to work toward each other, coming together. You can just even enhance that a little bit more, which typically helps to improve control. Anything else in particular that you and it's okay. I mean, you don't have to, it's not a test. You don't have to seek it out and go, what's the right answer?
Alright, so I usually, like, he doesn't like me doing this, but I watch videos of me from freshman year that's like, well, I felt like my mechanics were good and stuff, and my arms up and shit, I had no power.
Yeah.
So I used to be like a guy who used to like go here, like roll whip here, then I go down and like bring my arm down, like going downhill. But now I stop like here, and then I usually get like under, and then I go like this, and then I throw it.
So okay, I'm glad you bring that up, because let's talk about the relative positioning of your arm as compared to your shoulders. So when you go to throw, when you land, and we'll look at this, I'll just pull up the side view at the same time, just so we can address that. Let's see if we can find the side view on here. We kind of take a look at where you're at. Again, I know it's a little dark there, but so you see where your elbow is at in relation to your shoulders. I guess get it off that circle. Okay, there's your lead shoulder. It goes right through your throwing shoulder and right through your elbow. So this is the same point in time, side view and front view. If we go over here, as you rotate to throw, your body's going to try to create a relationship between your shoulders and your elbow, where your elbow does not get above a line that's created from your front shoulder to your throwing shoulder, especially as your arm bends backwards and then rotates forward. So there's a line that goes from your glove shoulder to your throwing shoulder. It's opposite for you, obviously. Glove shoulder to throwing shoulder. It's called your acromial line. Okay, it just basically means from point of shoulder to point of shoulder. From there, as your arm externally rotates, and then more importantly internally rotates, when it lays back like it is right there, and then it rotates inward, there's an angle that's below the line that's created from shoulder to shoulder that's optimal for your arm to rotate backwards and forwards. Okay? Now that's created by the positioning of your upper arm bone in that shoulder socket. So if you think of your shoulder socket as, you know, kind of like a claw, basically like this, and your upper arm bone, this bone right here, your humerus, sitting in that socket with the ball of that bone sitting right there. That angle is created by what's the good position for this head of your humerus to sit in there to be able to rotate, where it's not pulling out, it's sitting in there stable but mobile. Okay? Now, for everybody, that angle varies a little bit. So for some guys, it's maybe anywhere between like 2 and 5 degrees below the line that's created from here to here. Okay? From shoulder to shoulder, that acromial line. If you try to take your arm up higher and drive your elbow up, your brain is going to try to protect your shoulder and put it in that optimal position by repositioning that acromial line, which means the higher your arm goes up, the more your head and your upper body will tilt and displace over to the side to try to maintain that relationship. Now, you can do that, you can create that angle, but this displacement with your head and your upper body is also going to make it more difficult for you to rotate efficiently, which is part of how you accelerate your arm to the target, and also to be able to keep your head and your body moving forward toward the target, which makes it a little harder to control. Now, one way to get away from that but still have the high arm slot is to have significant arch in your spine when your front foot lands on the ground. Okay, so you look at the guys that have a high arm slot in the big leagues, say like a Tim Lincecum or like a Clayton Kershaw. Okay, so there's a lefty who's got a big high arm slot. When those guys land, they have a big lean in their upper body and in their back. Okay, so this arch is what ends up creating the angle and the tilt that allows the arm to be higher, to come through on a steeper angle, but have those shoulders in that tilted acromial line position without their head moving over to the side. So long story short, it's the difference between, okay, if you land like this, and then you go to try to take your arm up high, when you're rotating to throw, you're going to do this. Okay, the glove drops, the head tilts off to the side. Can't throw strikes, can't throw hard. Okay? Those guys at that level, if they want to throw from this tilted angle, they have to land here, in this position right here. So when they rotate to throw, see how my head didn't move? So I'm able to keep my head in the same position that it was in. I get this higher, steeper slot without having to displace my upper body. Tougher position to be in, requires more strength, requires more stability and more range of motion, but that's how those guys make it happen. That's also one of the reasons that, you know, a guy like a Lincecum will breaks down, because he puts his body in those kind of contorted positions to generate the power that he did and the deception that he did for the period of time that he did. But your body can only do that for so long when you're smaller and you're not as strong as like the big guys. Kershaw should probably be able to handle that kind of load for a longer period of time. Okay, so point being is that that's how you're talking about. You felt like your arm was higher and you were coming through steeper. Well, if you were, I would suspect that you had some more spine arch, some more tilt in your back and your upper body when you landed, if you were able to throw well and manage command from that higher slot. Okay. Now, on the other hand, I'm not a big believer in value of throwing downhill. Okay, this is a philosophy more of mine. I'm not a my way or the highway guy. I'm going to give you my opinion, but I'm going to tell you it's my opinion, and it's just based on all of my experiences. But there's going to be plenty that differ. Okay, now there's been a lot of value that's been placed on throwing the ball downhill. Okay, the trouble with that, in my opinion, is that balls that travel on a relatively straight plane it doesn't matter for the hitter whether or not they're traveling flatter or downward. The hitter can guesstimate where the ball is going to end up, if it's traveling on a straight plane, whether it's a downward plane or a flat plane. The other thing is that unless you are abnormally tall as compared to most of the other pitchers that are at your level, you can't create an angle that's abnormally steep, that's more difficult for hitters to be able to handle. So as a pitcher, unless you're 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", like one of those guys, the plane that you're throwing on the ball from 60 feet 6 inches away, okay, that has to end up in a strike zone that's from just under the knees to about waist high, has to travel on an angle that's pretty close to the same, regardless of whether you're trying to let go of the ball a few inches higher than a few inches lower. Over that distance, that angle is not going to make any difference. Okay? What makes a difference in terms of effectiveness is if you can get the ball to change planes on its path to the target. So our focus becomes more about how do we get that to happen. We don't care if the ball is going downhill. It will be going downhill if it's going toward the bottom of the zone, naturally, because you're up here, the strike zone's down here. But more importantly, if it's on its way there and on that path, it moves a little bit somewhere different, way harder to hit, way more difficult for hitters to be able to handle. So we try to gear the delivery to being able to make that happen. Okay, creating movement, creating late movements. Then velocity matters less.
That's what you had, right? Freshman year, I mean, his fastball, tailed a ton.
And lefties tend to pronate earlier. It just means that as you go to throw, your hand actually rotates outward. We don't snap our wrist when we go to throw. The hand turns outward, the palm turns facing out, okay? There's a contraction that you get in your forearm as your arm's extending away from your body at a high rate of speed that protects your elbow. It contracts and it keeps your elbow bent so you don't extend your arm all the way out straight, which gets bone on bone. That contraction occurs at different times for everybody. Lefties tend to have that, for whatever reason, happen a little bit earlier, but there's some righties that get early contraction and early pronation as well. If you're able to, with your delivery, keep the ball in your hand because you're heading in the direction of the target long enough that you can pronate before you let go, that's what creates the spin and the movement. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep the ball in your hand long enough for that type of thing to happen. And doing so by funneling all the momentum and acceleration that you're creating through the delivery forward toward the target instead of off to the side or steep from top to bottom, okay? It's hard enough to throw strikes. We don't want to make it any harder than it has to be by having your body go somewhere other than toward the strike zone, okay? All right, so we talked about that arm slot, that arm angle.
What about your landing foot? How open his foot is when it lands?
Yes.
He's a big thing he's worked a long time, especially I think with pick, it was bringing in the mitt, and he used to step really open.
Okay.
So I noticed now he steps more in a line with the other foot.
Yes.
The foot is completely
Right, it's
open.
rotated.
Yeah,
Yes.
Everything's rotating that way.
Yes. Yeah. And we've had guys that rotate past center. That it's okay. Basically, there's a couple of things that we're looking at when that happens. When your front foot plants on the ground, this is really point critical in the delivery. We don't care how you get here. It's where you're at when you get to this point. The efficiency of the position that you're in that's most important. It's kind of like a hitter. It doesn't matter if your hands are wiggling and you're standing up straight, your feet are together. When you take your stride and your front foot lands on the ground, you better be ready to hit. You better be in a strong position to be able to deliver your hips and then your upper body and your hands and control where the bat goes. Otherwise, you can't hit. How you got to that point doesn't really matter. Same thing when we go to throw. So the things that we're looking at once we get to this point are mobility and stability with your lower half in particular, then the sequencing or the ordering of the movements that happen from there, okay? So if we back it up for a second to kind of address that, we get to the point where you're about ready to separate your hands, you're at the top of the leg lift, and start to get a sense of how your body weight is positioned over your back foot. We start with a line that goes straight down from your head to the middle of your back foot to see where your weight's positioned at, kind of right in front of your ankle. Then we're going to get another line that comes straight out that's red that kind of indicates if you were to take a straight stride with that lead foot, and that's not really a fair line because you're on the first base side, so it's going to be slightly angled this way. Right about there would be straight to the target, okay? And then we track and see where your body goes relative to those lines as you come into landing. Now you can see your front foot lands on that line, and even though that lead foot is over-rotated, your mass in general is coming still right along the target. You see how your upper body's still on that yellow line. Now what we look at is how much rotation you have into when that front foot lands on the ground, and then what happens in terms of stability with that lead leg once your front foot is down and you rotate to throw, okay? So looking from the ground up, we like the general stride direction. Your lead foot is over-rotated at this point, but that's not necessarily a bad thing yet. We want to see that your lead knee is pretty close to vertical over your lead foot, and it looks like it's already slightly outside that lead foot, okay? If it's able to stay there and or move inward toward this line as you rotate to throw, perfectly fine. If it gives and rotates more out, unstable and problematic. So we'll watch what happens from there. You've got a lot of hip rotation that's happened into when your front foot lands on the ground, which isn't a problem, but we don't want to see early rotation with your upper body. So if when you land, we no longer can see your throwing arm behind your head, your glove side is already clear on the other side of that lead leg and part of the front of your shirt is exposed, you have early rotation. You're starting to turn early, which is one of those things as a pitcher you hear, oh, you're rotating early, stay close. You got to stay close. You got to stay close. Right? You've heard that before? How do you do it? Exactly. right? And there's very little feedback on what that true cause is for it, but there's discussion, oh, you're flying open. You're flying open, you gotta stay closed, you gotta stay closed. Well, we'll talk about what the cause is for that early rotation and how you address it to get your body in a position where you're still closed. So like here, see how we can still see your throwing arm back behind your head? Your shoulders are still rotated to where we can't see the front side of your shirt. That's where your upper body should be when your front foot's down. So timing-wise, we're a little bit off there relative to when that front foot lands on the ground. So we get you back to where you're at when that front foot's down, and let's just see what happens with that lead foot, lead knee, lead leg. See that lead knee giving even more? So it kind of slid even farther outside there, outside that line that it was on. Semi-unstable. It's working its way back a little bit right there, kind of trying to stabilize your hips. That glove is flared out far enough to the outside where your lead shoulder is slightly retracted back. So when you're letting go of the ball, instead of your shoulders being square to the target, they're slightly turned away, which may be partly because there's still some of that draw the glove back, which really all that does is rotate your shoulders away from the target. In reality, we want to be doing this. We go from close to separated back to close is the idea as you rotate through the throw. Okay, so I think that there's a couple of reasons that we're going to see better maybe from the side view that are cause for this early rotation that's getting your lead foot, lead hip, lead leg to rotate past center, and also ending up causing your upper body to start to deliver before your front foot's down on the ground too. Just some timing things, okay? Now, let's watch and see. We know that at this point when your front foot's down on the ground, you're still pretty well centered up on this line. Let's create the displacement angle. Okay, so when you rotate to throw, from where you're at when you land through where you're at when you release, we don't want your head to move more than 15 degrees to the glove side. Okay? All right, let's see. That's pretty darn good. So the center of your head as you rotate to throw, even with that glove being outside the box, if you will, you're still inside, you're still inside that 15-degree window. That becomes really important for command, okay? If your head is displacing more than 15 degrees, it makes it extremely tough for you to pick up when and where to let go of the ball in space to get it into the strike zone. So it looked to me, too, as I was watching you throw, that you do a pretty good job of keeping your head fairly steady. Now, one of the things we want to be sure of, though, is we don't want you to have to slow down in order to make that happen. If the more aggressive you get, the more your head displaces, then we have to figure out why that is. Okay? Right. Okay. Now, let's take a look and watch your plane of rotation. See how well you stay along that line. Pretty well. Okay, so as you come through, you do a pretty good job of letting your arm and your shoulders rotate through, staying along that same diagonal plane. It looks to me like you're slightly short on what we call our linear shift, which just means from where you're at when you land to where you're at when you release, you want to get some weight transfer that happens from back to front, which generally is going to carry your back leg out past your front leg. And the momentum that you've got on a diagonal with your arm coming across will typically cause that back leg to end up somewhere over here. Yeah. When we see that back leg ending up even with or slightly behind the lead foot, it generally means that you're short in terms of that linear shift, which is a loss of a source of power. And again, makes it a little bit more difficult to funnel all of that energy or any energy that you had toward the target. Okay? There's a balance that we're trying to achieve between rotation and linear shift. And if we have too much of an imbalance with one or the other, we either lose power or command or both. So to me, in looking at this rep, it looks like, and watching you in general, like you could get some value out of creating a little bit more of a back to front linear shift. Okay? All right. So summarizing that from the front view real quick, and then we'll start to look more closely at the side view. Stride direction overall is solid. Over rotation with the lead foot and lead knee, possibly caused by an early shift of weight from back to front, which we'll talk about. The glove side is a little low and slightly wide. As you rotate to throw, your arm action looks really good to me. I didn't bring that one up either. The way your arm lays back, it creates this acute angle between your upper arm and your lower arm. We call that a power D. We want to see that acute angle when your arm externally rotates. It reduces how much torque and stress is placed on your shoulder and your elbow during that external rotation. All right, so that arm action looks good. That's a positive. Looks like the general path of your arm overall is pretty good. Just to give you, I mean, you look at the angle of your arm right here. Let's just take a quick look at that. Before I move on much more, we're going to go hand to elbow, elbow to shoulder. There we go. Okay. So you're slightly above. That's interesting. I don't see that when I looked at that last. There, 24, 38, okay, and 56. So your net arm slot angle, 38 to 56, is 18. That just means the amount of bend that you have off of. If this is 0, you're at about 18 degrees. That's just like a fingerprint of your delivery, okay? The one thing that I look at right here, that we're going to look at a couple others to see if it looks the same, is this angle that goes from shoulder to elbow. That elbow height and that line that's created is slightly above that acromial line. That, in my opinion, could be something that may be a little bit of a contributor to the dysfunction in your shoulder. It's not normal, from what I've seen, that you guys are able to get that into that position. Typically, there's more displacement in the head, like I was talking about, that gets you back to that position where that line is slightly lower. I suspect that an overemphasis on trying to get your arm up higher may be a contributor. And you're either going to need to allow that arm to drop down a little bit lower or arch your back and your spine more to accommodate your arm being higher. And that will end up being something that's kind of a trial and error that, again, it all comes back to what are the results it produces. I suspect that at this point for you, your biggest objective is to get back to feeling stronger and feeling like the ball comes out of your hand better, regardless of what it looks like. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So not so much, you have some ideas of what you think it felt like and what you think it looked like, but whatever it gets to be is more just about the results that you're able to achieve. Okay. Let's take a quick look and see if that seems to be the same thing. It's looking like it. Let's go. Point. That one's closer, but it's still a little bit above. Like I said, usually we want to see that that's somewhere between like at least 3 to, some guys are up to like 7, 8 degrees below that shoulder line. Yeah, and that's definitely above it. That also could be, that can be contributing to just not feeling quite right, deceleration, early deceleration, because you're subconsciously trying to protect your shoulder, which your brain has a funny way of doing that, where a lot of times we get in our own way, and its number one concern is protecting you. And try not to get hurt even more than it is trying to produce a good pitch. And we just want to get out of the way of that. Again, make sure that there's no governors or inhibitors that get put on to keep you from getting hurt because you're trying to push yourself through a range that doesn't want to work. Okay? All right, so that would be something that I would say would be worthwhile to address. is trying to take a look at getting yourself in a position where that elbow is traveling through on a path that's slightly below that acromial line. Okay.